Today's daf is daf Nun Gimel. We got up to the top of the Amud in the middle of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah describes how exactly the Kohen implemented his avodas hazrika, ol lakevesh upon la sovev. So it's something called a sovev, a ledge, and the Kohen went up the kevesh. He turned towards the sovev. Ubalo lekeren dromis mizrachis. So the Mizbeach had four corners, and he comes to the southern eastern corner of the Mizbeach, and that seems to be a reflection of the general rule that when you are about to do an avodah, you do it at the first place. You don't pass over that. Then he continues with the avodas hadam, and now he's going to go this way around, which I guess you'd call counterclockwise. Mizrachis tzonis, tzonis maravis, maravis dromis. He covers all four corners. Shiore Adam Yishofer Yisod dromis. So the shfichas shirayim was done according to this Mishnah on the Yisod HaMizbeach on the southern side, on the dromi. Right? We're talking about chatos, as we said yesterday, and these chatos are eaten lifnim. Really, it should have said lifnim min ha-mechitzos, but in the Mishkan it was called, there were no mechitzos, it was lifnim min ha-kloyos, the curtains. L'zichrei kuna, now chatos can only be eaten by kohanim, male kohanim, b'chol machol, l'yom v'layla ad chatzos, right? So the allotted time for achilas chatos is yom v'layla. It's that day of the avoda and the night following the day of the avoda up until chatzos. Now, what does the Mishnah mean when it says b'chol machol? That's really going to be in contradistinction to Korban Pesach, which has to be eaten tzli. So here, in the case of basar chatos, the Kohen is allowed to prepare the meat in any way, shape, or form he likes. The Gemara says, "Hechi ovid." Let's analyze machlokas amoraim about how the Kohen actually would implement the nesinas hadam, the matanos, and it's machlokas shin Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Elazar. Chanom, according to one of these two opinions, no saying ama elech vi ama elech. So we said that when he comes up the kevesh, so there's a place where it's called the edge, if you want to call it the edge of the corner of the four corners of the mizbeach, and he can put the dam one amma beyond that edge of the corner, and it could be on this side, or an amma beyond the edge on the other side. In other words, he doesn't have to apply the dam precisely at the edge of the corner. He could put the blood on the wall alongside the edge of the corner, as long as it's within an amma of the edge. Chanomer, according to the other opinion, mechate is a word for the nesinas adam, v'yored keneged chudo shel keren. In other words, he moves his finger, we'll see later on which finger, downward along the edge of the mizbeach wall. And it's opposite the edge of the keren, of the horn, and along the edge of the corner below the horn. So it's not an amma beyond the edge of the corner on this side or on that side, but rather it's going to be moving his finger downwards, and it's going to be opposite the edge of the horn. And he says he need not apply it to the keren itself, but apply it to the body of the mizbeach below the horn, as long as he applies it to the edge of the corner. So again, machate is used by the Torah in Vayikra Vav. Fine. So the Gemara asks the following. Al liba de Rabbi Elazar of Reb Shimon, l'chaora, this machlokus between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar has to be analyzed in the light of Rabbi Elazar of Reb Shimon. Di Omar hu atzma, he atzma, enu nases ela begufa shel keren. So with regard to a chatas, according to Rabbi Elazar of Reb Shimon, the matan domim should be done on the keren itself. So according to that, you could not have a machlokas amoraim kuliyamalo pligi. Everybody agrees that the dam does not have to be applied to the keren, but anywhere, not the corners of the keren, but anywhere on it. That's called the gufo shel keren. Ki pligi. So where do Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar disagree? Al liba de Rebbe. And Rebbe has the dissenting view, and according to Rebbe, the dam of achatas can be applied even below the kronos. That's the area between the chut hasikra in the middle and the bottom of the keren on top, of the keren on top. So Mar Sover, one of these two Amoraim, holds that Ama Elech v'Ama Elech keneged kerenhu. So this area, which is extending beyond the edge of the corner on the side of the Mizbech, or an Amma beyond the edge of the corner on the other side, the opposite horn, is Amma Elech v'Ama Elech keneged kerenhu. So the area extended is an Amma beyond the edge of the corner on this side and an Amma beyond the edge of the corner on this side, corresponding to it. So the application now of the dam could be made to any part of the area that is the same as the application made to the keren itself. Umar Sober, according to the other opinion, can negate chuda in opposite the edge of the horn. That indeed corresponds to the horn, and you could apply the dam there, but tfei lo. Now, what does it mean tfei lo? Although we see that the Torah uses the term keren, which we translate as horn, but the Torah uses it broadly. It doesn't restrict the dam, nesinas adam, to the actual horns of the mizbeach, but the dam must be applied to a part of the wall of the mizbeach that can be called keren. The only part of the body of the mizbeach to which this application can be applied is the actual corner itself. In other words, the word keren meaning horn and corner. So therefore, if one applies the dam below the keren, he must apply it to the edge of the corner. So if the chatas dam is applied below the kronos, it must be applied to the edge of the corner. Keneged chuda. So Gemara says now we have an objection to that opinion that the dam could be applied up to an amma on each side of the edge of the corner. Meisvei chatos hatzibra, the Brisa says, ve'ayochid, ketzad matan domim, how was the blood applied? Haya ola lakevesh upana lasovev, as we already saw in our Mishnah, ubala lekeren dromus mizrachis. So he comes to the southeast corner of the Mizbeach. V'tovel betzbo hayimanis, right? Which etzba? Hamiyumenis shebiyamin, right? The dexterous finger on his right hand, namely the forefinger. Min adam sheba mizrach, and the dam was received in a mizrach, and now he has to do the nesinas adam from the dam in the mizrach. V'chomer begudlo milamalo be'etzba ktana milamata. So he's going to concentrate the dam on the tip of his finger. And how does he do so? He guides it with his thumb from above and his little finger from below. And now he's going to apply the dam by moving his finger downward along the edge of the mizbeach. That's opposite the edge of the horn of the keren. Ad shemachala kol adam shebe'etzba, until he uses up all the dam on his finger. V'chol v'chein kol keren v'keren. This is what he does to each one of the four kronos. Now, obviously, this brisa that emphasized that the dam has to be applied to the chuda, to the edge keneged chuda shel keren, at the edge of the keren of the corner, I ovad ama elech v'yama elech les lon ba. So the Gemara is now sort of reinterpreting this brisa, because in the brisa itself it says machati v'yored keneged chuda shel keren ad shemachala kol hadam shebetz v'chol chen kol keren u keren. No, and we thought, how could any Amora be defended by saying that the dam could apply within an amma of the side, right, of the side of the corner? But now we're reinterpreting it. We're saying mitzvah bechuda lechatchila. If all is equal, he should apply the blood to the edge of the corner. But he over ama elef yama elech less lan ba. My Rebbe umay Rebbe Loza Reb Shimon. Right? What are these two opinions? The Sanya we learned in the Brisa. Brisa is going to start with Rebbe. Domim hel yonim nitanim michut l'sikol amal. And domim hatachtonim nitanim michut hasikol amat divrei Rebbe. Rebbe Loza Reb Shimon Omer pamed dvarim amurim. When do we say that the elyonim have to be applied above the chut hasikra? That's be olas ha'of. But bechatos behema, he atzma ein nasis ella al gufa shel keret. Omer Rabbi Abba, my time of the Rebbe, the Chsiv, the pasuk says, vehaharil. I think there's a pasuk, if I'm not mistaken, in Yechezkel and Novi. I'm just, yeah, in Yechezkel Mem Gimel. Vehaharil arba amos. Umeaharil, haril is the mizbeach, and umeaharil ulamala, from the mizbeach and above, there are 4 chronos. So again, haril refers to the mizbeach, and now the Gemara says arba amos he hu dahavya, right? The mizbeach, and this is a rhetorical question, is indeed only 4 amos high or wide. That can't be true. There's absolutely no dimension of the mizbeach as a whole that is only 4 amos. Omar Avada bar Ava Makom Kronos Arba. So that's the area of the Kronos. So Gemara asks Makom Kronos Dalid Havya. The area of the Kronos can be described as Dalid Amos. It's really Shtayim al Shtayim. Ela Eva Rishus Kronos Dal. There's a separate halacha that there's a domain, so to speak, of the Kronos, and that domain extends for 4 amos. So the legal domain of the Kronos extends 4 amos into the body of the Mizbeach, giving the corner of the Mizbeach directly beneath the Kronos, the legal status of Kronos. And that's going to be the source for Rebbe's opinion that the dam of an chatos, an animal, can be applied even to the area directly beneath the Kronos. This haharel arba amos umeharelu lamala arba amos hudahavya. So the Gemara says, is it really true 4 amos? Is it indeed 4 amos high or wide? Certainly not. Mokom Kronos arba. So there's a domain of the Kronos which is 4 amos, and therefore that's called Rishus Kronos Dalit. And that's going to be the source for Rebbe's opinion that the dam of the behemoth of the chatos can be applied even to the area beneath the Kronos. Tonight, we have a Mishnah in Midos Chut Shel Sikra Chogo Be'emtza. Lahavdil bein dam elyonim l'damim hatachtonim minani bili. In other words, we're looking for a source to derive that the midpoint of the Mizbeach forms the dividing line between the Elyon and the Tachton. Amarav, Ravach bar Hoysol Reshes ad Chatzia Mizbeach. So this pasuk at the end of Shmos, I believe. Yeah. So Hareshes means the Torah is giving a mechitza, lahavdu ben dom milyonu lidomin hatachton. Now the Mishnah goes on and says Shari Adam on the Durham of the Yesodam is Beton Rabbanon. And now the Gemara wants to find a source for the Durham. Why is the Durham of the Yesodam is Beach El Yesod HaMizbeach? Right, the pasuk only says in Vayikra Daled regarding the Chatos and the Nasi that the dam is on the Yesod HaMizbeach. It doesn't say where. Ze Yesod Dromi. So Chazal taught us in this brayso that we're learning now that this is referring to the southern side. Ata Omer says Yesod Dromi. The brayso itself challenges itself. Eino El Yesod Maravi. And we'll soon see that there's a reason why you would dafka push for the western side of the base. The Yilmod Sosim and Furash. Why? Because in the case of the Chatos Hapnimis, there the Torah already defines that the Shiorei Dam of the inner Chatos, the Chatos Hapnimis, should be put on Maravi side of the base of the Mizbech HaOla. And therefore, I would say Yilmad Sosim and Afurish. If the Torah doesn't define which side of the base, in the case of the Chatas Chitzona, let's derive from Chatas Pnimis. And if they raise that argument, so Amr, you should tell them that Lamad Yiridosim and Akevesh Liitziasim and Ahechel. That we're going to make a comparison between the Kohen's descent from the Kevesh and the time that he just exits out of the Heichal. And we're going to really, in effect, derive the procedure for the Chatas HaChitzona from the Chatas HaPnimis, but it's a different principle. When the Kohen exits the Heichal and he's holding the Shiori Adam of the Chatas HaPnimis, he pours it on the Marav, on the Maravi, on the western side of the base. But at the same token, when the Kohen descends from the Kevesh, holding the remaining dam of the Chatas HaChitzoni, he therefore pours it on the southern base, because that's the base that's closest to him, and this is the reflection of the principle mitzvah bal yodcha al of ein ovrim al mitzvahs. Ma yitzos b'neicha b'somach lo af yitziriyos b'nekevesh b'somach lo. Tanya, we learned to the Bryce Rabbi Shmuel Omer Zevazeh Yisod Maravi. Even in the case of the Chatas HaChitzona, the Shiori Adam should be poured on the Maravi, the Yisod Maravi. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochanan Omer, Shimon bar Yochai says, Zevazeh Yisod Dromi. So l'chora, I mean, neither shita really works out too well. So the Gemara says, no, that I could understand, because again, we're going to apply the principle of Yalfina and Sasu Min HaMefurash. And just like we said, in the case of Chatas HaPnimis, the Torah requires Yisod Maravi, so therefore, in the case of Sasum, which means where the Torah doesn't specify in the Chatas HaChitzona, we're going to derive it and therefore be Maravi. So that Mandiomer is consistent. Elamandiomer Yisod Dromi, my time, I mean, the Torah says in the Chatas Pnimis that it's in Yisod Maravi. So how can you say Zeh v'zeh b'dromi? Rav Asi Kasover Haitain, it all depends upon the structure of the Mizbeach. That Kule Mizbeach b'tzofon koi. Rab Shimon bar Yochai is of the opinion that the entire Mizbeach stood in the northern part, and leaving the when the Kohen leaves, therefore the Heichal, then he immediately encounters the base on the Tzad Dromi. So therefore, he has a diagram here where you see that the Kohen comes out and he's on the Tzad Dromi of the Heichal. He says, Rabbi Shmuel, the entire altar was situated north of the Heichal's entrance. Thus, when exiting the Heichal, the southern base was closest to him. And Lishnachrina, different formulation, Kuli Pesach Adoram Koi. Let's just finish up to the Mishnah on the top and on Gimel Amid Beis. Tani debei Rabbi Shmuel. We have Brisa in the name of Rabbi Shmuel that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Omrim. In other words, the Talmidim in the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shmuel, together with the quote here and the attribution attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Zev v'zeh Yisod Ma'aravi. In other words, whether it's the Chatas HaPnimis or the Chatas HaChitzona, right? The Shiori Adam are always poured on the Ma'aravi, on the western side. So it comes out that according to the Talmidim of Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai agreed with Rabbi Shmuel. V'simonech moshchu gavri legavri. Right, the man drew the man over to their side. In other words, the Talmidim of Rabbi Shmuel's Beis Medrash drew the man, meaning Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, over to the position of their teacher of Rabbi Shmuel. This leads us to the Mishnah here on the top of Daf Nun Gimel Amid Beis.